The prison guard who would appear in the least expected places. Hi everyone, long-time lurker, first-time poster. I've thought about sharing this story several times, and I'm finally getting around to it. This is going to be sort of long, so I apologize in advance. This takes place when I was about 10 to 12 years old, 2 years age gap, because it occurred over a year and a half. When my mom would pick me up after school, we would occasionally stop at a gas station or the Walgreens down the street and pick up a snack. So, on this particular day, we pulled up to the Walgreens and waited in the car while my mom finished up a phone call. As we're about to get out of the car, a small red vehicle pulled up. I've already whipped open the door of my mom's minivan and was ready to jump out when the driver of the car got out of his vehicle. He was a bigger guy, about 6'3" and heavier set, with gray balding hair and a beard. He smiled at me when he got out and said, "Well, I didn't notice you two." My mom just turned to him and half-heartedly laughed, and he ended up striking up a conversation with us. The conversation itself was relatively normal at first, but then turned personal. He noticed my red jacket and goes, "Oh, you must go to an all-girls high school academy. I should have known. All you academy girls are pretty." I was super confused because 1, I was 10 years old, and didn't look old enough to be in high school. 2, my uniform was definitely visible, and looked nothing like the ones they wore at the other school. Me, being a dumb 10-year-old kid, corrected him and said, "Oh no, I go to elementary school. I'm only in 4th grade." He just laughed and said, "Well, you sure look nice, and pretty enough to be an academy girl." At this point, I could tell that my mom was both annoyed and uncomfortable. He was leaning into the car, blocking my ability to get out. He started telling us he is the guard for one of the prisons in the city, and how he can be demanding and rough if he needs to be. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, "All those tough inmates are terrified of me. I'm a big guy. I could really hurt someone if I need to." My mom ended the conversation around this point, saying we were in a rush, and the creep finally moved from the doorway of our car. We walked into the store, and he got back into his car and just sat there. He never went into the store. My mom started fussing at me for telling him my name, age, and what school I went to, and the stranger danger finally started to settle in. When we left the store, he was gone. Flash forward to about 6 months later, I'm with my mom at a Walmart about 25 minutes away from where the first encounter took place. My mom and I are at the register, checking out, and she realized she forgot something. She sent me to go get it, and on my way back to the register, I see the same man stop dead in his tracks and stare at me. "Hey, well, Mrs. I was wondering when I get to see you again." I just stared back at him for a second before mumbling a quick "hey" and walked off to meet my mom. As I was walking away, I could hear him say under his breath, "I need to get around to that one." And when I looked over my shoulder, he was still staring at me. After this encounter, I figured it was just a coincidence. It's a large city, but at the time, we only had like 2 or 3 Walmarts in total, so maybe it was just an accidental run-in. I told my mother about it, and she made me promise that if I ever saw him again, I'd let her know about it. A year later, I'd all but forgotten about the creepy prison guard. My sister and her husband had been visiting us for about a week, and they were packing up to leave. We followed them to one of the gas stations around the corner from our parents' house, so my parents and sister could get gas. I went in with my mother and sister to get one of those styrofoam ice chests and a couple of other things as well. I ended up wandering around the small store on my own. It didn't take long before I ran into, you guessed it, creepy prison guard. This time, I was really creeped out. The Walgreens where I first encountered him was across the city, maybe 45 minutes away from my parents' house, and the Walmart was also a good distance away. This gas station was less than a mile away from my house, and it made me severely uncomfortable that this guy who gave me the creeps was so close to my home. He smiled at me, almost like he'd been waiting for me, but before he could talk to me, my mom and sister appeared around the corner. My mother grabbed my hand, told me we need to check out, and started to walk across towards the register. Creepy guy put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You don't have to pay for all that. I have an ice chest in my car. You can come grab it with me and we'll be right back. Of course, my mother wasn't having any of it. She kept telling him it was fine. We didn't need it. But he kept insisting, even after we'd paid for everything. He followed us out to our cars and only stopped insisting that I come with him to get his ice chest when he saw my dad and brother-in-law. He tried to strike up a jovial conversation with them, and even ended up walking to his car behind the building and grabbing his ice chest. He tossed it into the bed of my brother-in-law's truck, looked at me and said, "It was nice running into you." My mom never told me what came of it, but she called the police and the prison he worked at and filed complaints. Knowing the police force in that area, I'm sure that nothing was done, but it's been nearly 11 years now and I haven't seen him since that last time at the gas station. So, creepy prison guard who showed too much interest in a 10-year-old girl. Let's not meet ever again. Kidnapped by a prison guard. The boyfriend who couldn't let go. I have left the West Coast to go to a college in Missouri. In my second year, I started dating a guy who was in the police academy. When he graduated, he ended up being a guard for the South Center Correctional Prison. He was older than me by almost 10 years, and early on I saw red flags which I sadly ignored. Red flags like how he got a 16 pregnant the previous year and had a son that he never wanted to meet, and another red flag was when he would start bar fights if I talked to any other guys. Before I went home for Thanksgiving, he bought me a golden lab puppy who I named Roxy. He kept the dog while I flew home. My parents and I decided that I was going to move back to California and finish college there, because the small Midwest was not my scene. Too many of my sorority sisters didn't care about getting an education. Rather, they would start dating a guy and lie to them about being on the pill in hopes to trap them into a marriage when they got pregnant. When I told my boyfriend I would be returning home after the end of the year, he went ballistic. I mean really crazed. He would call me non-stop, yelling, then crying and then threatening. He threatened if I didn't come home, he'd kill the puppy. When I returned, I asked where the dog was. He said she got sick and died. Later, we went by his parents' house for something, and his mom pulled me into a private home and told me how he ran over the puppy with his truck on purpose after our phone call on Thanksgiving. Like, what the fuck? A few weeks later, after final exams, my mom flew down to help me pack up my car to be shipped home. On the last night, my boyfriend came by the hotel for our goodbyes. He had tried everything from proposing with a cheap, ugly-looking marked diamond ring. My response was, "Did you buy this from Walmart?" Where he said, "What does it matter if I did? It wasn't for you anyways," and he threw it in the back seats. I was firm in saying we could try long distance, but I was moving home and done with Missouri. Then he locked the doors to the truck, grabbed my purse and put it on his side of the driver's seat, and proceeded to drive off with me in the car. His home was a 2-hour drive from the hotel in a small trailer park town near Rolla. I pleaded and begged. My phone was blowing up, probably my mother. I said she would call the cops. And tell them what? She didn't have my plates or know where I live, plus I am a cop. When we got to his trailer, he locked up my purse in his gun room. It was a rough night, and one I have blocked from my memory, so I wouldn't be able to share it to you guys with any details except I remember being naked and tied up. In the morning, untied, he made me breakfast and said he had to go to work. I asked him, when can I talk to my mom? He even tried playing the game where I need to call my mom and tell her the good news that I would be staying here with him. He smiled his creepy small lip smile. He said we would discuss it later and that I wasn't going anywhere. When he left, I quickly got dressed and tried the door. It was locked from the outside. He had put a fucking padlock on both doors to the trailer. There was no one around us for miles, except for his aunt, who also had a trailer on the property. I broke the kitchen window and climbed out. I ran to her trailer and pounded on the door. I didn't know her well, other than an occasional wave. I said, "I'm Kevin's girlfriend, and I need to use your phone, it's an emergency." I pushed myself in her door because she was going to let me in whether she wanted to or not. I called my dad at home because I couldn't remember my mom's cell phone number, and I told him I was okay. Instead of concerns from my parents, I got yelled at that I would miss my plane, and made my mother upset that I disappeared to go off with my boyfriend. My parents didn't quite understand the situation I had just gone through. I tried explaining again, but I was too scared. Kevin might come back early. I asked his aunt to his mother. She hesitated and then called her, saying, "There's a strange girl here who says she needs to talk to you." I explained the situation and that my purse was locked inside. She said to hang tight and keep the drapes shut. The aunt was an old lady and not much of a talker, except for the occasional remarks about her, Kevin, being an angel. When his mother finally arrived, she had my purse. I didn't ask how. My phone, of course, was dead, but luckily I was alive with an escape plan. His mom drove me the 2 hours back to the hotel. She didn't say much, and when she did, it was about her son being special, and that he was a sweet boy with good intentions, and something about when he had his eye on something pretty, he usually had to have it. I knew I need to get out of that state ASAP. I finally got home. My parents didn't quite understand the fact that I got kidnapped. They aren't typical loving parents I know others have, but they understood quickly how Kevin was a problem. Luckily, he didn't know where I lived, but he got hold of the house phone number and called nonstop. Both my cell and the home phone were off the hook and full voicemail box. My dad and I went to the police station and filed a restraining order. I started dating someone new and posted on Facebook that we would be going to Disneyland. Last minute, we changed our plans and headed to Tahoe for some ski at a friend's cabin. That same week, my father got a call from his private Disney club that a man had been asking for me every day, waiting outside the entrance. It was Kevin. My father told him it was my stalker, and thank you to the power of Disney, security escorted him off the guards, and he was put into Disney's blacklist. So I was told. The last I heard from him was from a friend who lived in the same hometown, that Kevin had gotten a 15-year-old pregnant from a New Year's Eve party right after I had left for California, and he ended up marrying her. It scares me to think about what could have happened, and the hell that I luckily escaped.